Welcome to the final episode of Angela Kwadwo and Kim Tae-hyun's story. If you missed the first episode, go back and watch it now so you understand how one night of devastating betrayal transformed into an unexpected journey of protection, trust, and a love neither of them anticipated. For weeks, Angela had existed in a strange limbo between terror and something she couldn't quite identify. Kim Tae-hyun's penthouse had become both her refuge and her confinement, a luxurious sanctuary where she was shielded but uncertain about everything, especially her own feelings. Each morning, she expected to feel imprisoned. Instead, she felt something dangerously close to secure. Tae-hyun had changed lately. Less of the cold, calculating kingpin who'd confronted her that first horrifying morning, and more of someone who actually perceived her as a person rather than a complication to resolve. He'd begun with small gestures, leaving fresh coffee for her before departing for his operations, ensuring her preferred meals appeared at dinner, asking about her day as if her responses genuinely mattered to him. And Angela found herself reciprocating in unexpected ways. Waiting for his return in the evenings, feeling her heartbeat accelerate when she heard his key in the lock, catching herself smiling at his dry commentary about his business dealings. These weren't the responses of a captive. These were the responses of a woman falling for her guardian. And that realization frightened her more than anything Ji-hye had done. 3 weeks had elapsed since that morning when she'd awakened in his bed. 3 weeks of Tae-hyun's security network working relentlessly to investigate Ji-hye's connections, to construct a case, to determine exactly what had transpired and why. 3 weeks of Angela attempting to process that her cousin, her mother's niece, had drugged her and attempted to trade her like merchandise. On a quiet Sunday evening, while rain hammered the windows and transformed Seoul into a blur of neon and gray, Angela found herself unable to rest. She'd retreated to the living area, curled up on the leather sofa with a throw blanket, gazing out at the storm and thinking about her parents. Her mother, who'd departed too young. Her father who'd followed within a year, his heart literally shattered by loss. How proud they'd been when she'd received her teaching certificate. How thrilled her mother had been about Angela experiencing her Korean heritage. If only they could see her now, living with a man she barely knew, hiding from family that wanted to harm her. Trapped in a nightmare that increasingly felt like a strange, complex dream. She didn't hear Tae-hyun approach. Didn't realize he was there until he draped a second blanket over her shoulders, the gesture so unexpectedly tender that tears welled in her eyes. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly, settling into the chair across from her rather than presuming to sit beside her. That careful distance he always maintained, respecting her boundaries, even in his own space. "Too much thinking," Angela admitted, pulling the blanket tighter. "About my parents, how I arrived here, how everything deteriorated so rapidly." She wiped at her eyes, frustrated by the tears. 4 months ago, I was living my normal life in Houston, teaching literature, meeting friends for brunch, planning a boring, predictable future. Now I'm hiding from my cousin in a stranger's penthouse in Seoul. And I don't even know what happens next. "I'm not a stranger anymore," Tae-hyun said, and something in his tone made her look up. His expression was softer than she'd ever witnessed, vulnerable in the dim lighting. "Am I?" "No," Angela admitted. "I suppose you're not." They sat in silence for a while, simply listening to the rain and the distant rumble of thunder. It was Tae-hyun who finally broke it, his voice quiet but clear. "My parents used to argue," he said suddenly. "Not about significant things. Small things. My father would work excessive hours. My mother would question his business choices. Normal family friction." He paused, staring at his hands. The night they were killed, they'd been disagreeing about something trivial. I can't even recall what. And then they left for a business meeting. Still tense with each other. They never arrived. Angela's breath caught. "Tae-hyun, I'm so sorry. I blamed myself for years," he continued. "Thought if I'd intervened, distracted them, made them stay home, maybe they'd still be alive. It took years to understand that some things simply happen. That life is chaotic and merciless and doesn't respect our plans." "Is that why you need so much control?" Angela asked gently. Why everything has to be calculated and managed? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Probably. My therapist would certainly agree with you. You have a therapist? Every person in my position does. We're all varying degrees of damaged and controlling. He stood, moving to the window, his reflection ghostly in the rain-streaked glass. When you woke up in my bed that morning, I thought it was another threat to neutralize, another variable to eliminate. I'd constructed my entire existence around controlling outcomes, and then there you were, this terrified woman with the most genuine eyes I'd ever seen, throwing all my careful systems into disarray. Angela rose from the sofa, the blanket falling away as she crossed to stand beside him. I'm sorry I disrupted your life. He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her pulse quicken. I'm not. Because you showed me that control isn't the same as living. That safety isn't the same as fulfillment. That sometimes the most important things are the ones we never anticipated. Tae-hyun, she began, but the words died because he was looking at her like she was something precious, something worth protecting not from obligation, but from genuine care. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice dropping lower. My intelligence network found something today about your cousin and Mr. Baek. Fear spiked through Angela's chest. What did they find? Your cousin owes Mr. Baek 300 million won. That's roughly $250,000. She borrowed it to cover gambling debts, and she's been repaying it by. He hesitated as if the words tasted bitter. By procuring young women for him. Foreign women specifically. Women who wouldn't be missed if they vanished. Angela felt her legs weaken. Tae-hyun's hand shot out to steady her, guiding her to sit on the window seat. How many? She whispered. How many women? We've confirmed 3 others over the past 2 years. Students, workers on temporary visas. All of them disappeared from official records shortly after your cousin introduced them to Baek. Horror crawled up Angela's spine. And I was supposed to be the 4th. Yes, except you ended up in my penthouse instead of his. Your cousin made an error, delivered you to the wrong location. Baek showed up at the place she'd arranged, found it empty, and has been demanding she deliver what he paid for. That's why she's searching for me. Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. It's not about family or concern. She needs to hand me over to him or face the consequences herself. Tae-hyun nodded grimly. According to the communications we've intercepted, Baek gave her an ultimatum. 7 days to produce you, or she becomes the payment for her debt. Good, Angela said, surprising herself with the venom in her voice. Let her face what she tried to do to me. Let her experience what it feels like to be terrified and powerless. Angela, no. I mean it. She stood abruptly, anger flooding through her veins, hot and righteous. She drugged me. She tried to sell me to a man who's probably murdered those other women. She's my mother's niece, and she was willing to destroy me to save herself. Why should I care what happens to her? Tae-hyun didn't argue. He simply watched her with those dark, intelligent eyes, letting her rage burn itself out. When she finally deflated, sinking back onto the window seat with tears streaming down her face, he moved closer and carefully, giving her every chance to refuse, wrapped his arms around her. Angela buried her face against his chest and wept. For her parents, who'd never know what their daughter had endured. For the innocence she'd lost. For the 3 women who'd come before her and probably hadn't been fortunate enough to end up in the wrong place. For the horror of realizing family could be more dangerous than strangers. Tae-hyun held her through it all, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soft words in Korean she didn't understand but somehow found comforting anyway. When she finally pulled back, exhausted from crying, he cupped her face gently and wiped her tears with his thumbs. You're safe, he said firmly. I promise you, Angela, you are safe, and she will never touch you again. How can you promise that? She's out there with people searching for me. Mr. Baek has money and power and connections. And I have more of all 3, Tae-hyun said with quiet confidence. Plus, I have something they don't. I have evidence of their crimes. When I'm ready, I'll destroy them both. But first, I need to make sure you're completely protected. The way he said it, the absolute certainty in his voice, made something shift in Angela's chest. This wasn't just obligation anymore. This was personal for him. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked. "You could have just sent me to the police that first morning. Let them handle it. Why did you take on this burden?" Tae-hyun was quiet for a long moment, his hands still cradling her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Because when I looked at you that morning, terrified and confused and so clearly innocent, I saw something I thought I'd lost. Hope. Possibility. A reason to be better than just powerful." He paused. "And because somewhere between that first day and today, you stopped being a burden and started being something else entirely." "What?" Angela whispered, barely breathing. "Someone I can't imagine losing." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Angela's heart pounded so hard, she was certain he could feel it. This was dangerous territory, complicated and messy, everything they should probably avoid. But when Tae-hyun leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Angela didn't move. She let him close the distance until his lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle, questioning, and absolutely perfect. It lasted only seconds before he pulled back, searching her face for regret or fear. Instead, Angela smiled, truly smiled for the first time in weeks. "Again," she whispered. This time, when he kissed her, there was no hesitation. His hand slid into her hair, and Angela's wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, weeks of tension and denied attraction finally finding release. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Tae-hyun rested his forehead against hers. "This is complicated," he murmured. "I know," Angela replied. "But right now, I don't care. Your cousin is still hunting for you. Baek is getting desperate. Being close to me might make you an even bigger target." "Then keep me close," she said simply. "Keep me close and keep me safe." Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. "Always," he promised. They spent the rest of the evening curled together on the sofa, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other in ways that had nothing to do with the crisis that had brought them together. Tae-hyun told her about his operations, about his plans to legitimize his business, about his dreams of using his resources for good. Angela told her about her students, about teaching literature to teenagers in Houston, about her dream of maybe opening her own school someday. It felt normal, beautifully, impossibly normal, like they were just two people getting to know each other rather than a kingpin protecting a woman from her murderous cousin. But reality was never far away. The next morning, while Tae-hyun was on a secure call with his intelligence team, Angela decided to make breakfast. She was slicing fruit when Tae-hyun emerged from his office, his expression grave. "They located her," he said without preamble. "My team tracked Ji-hye to a hotel in Gangnam. She's hired at least 5 different investigators to search for you. She's distributed your photo to informants all over the city." Angela set down the knife, her hands trembling. "She's really that desperate?" "Yes, which makes her dangerous. Desperate people make mistakes, but they also take risks they normally wouldn't." He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "I need you to trust me completely for what comes next." "What comes next?" "We set a trap. We let her think she's found you." Fear shot through Angela's veins. "You want to use me as bait?" "No," Tae-hyun said firmly. "I want to use the illusion of you as bait. I'll have my team stage photos of someone they'll hire to resemble you from a distance. We'll plant them where Ji-hye's investigators will find them. Make her think you've been spotted in a specific location. When she moves to grab you, we'll have cameras, witnesses, and police ready to document everything. You're going to trap her. I'm going to give her enough rope to hang herself with," he corrected. "And Mr. Baek along with her. Both of them will be exposed, arrested, and prosecuted. But I need you to stay hidden here, safe, while it happens." "Can you do that?" Angela thought about those 3 women who'd come before her, about the terror they must have felt, about stopping Ji-hye and Baek before they could hurt anyone else. "Yes," she said. "Whatever it takes." Over the next 3 days, Tae-hyun's plan unfolded with precision. His security team hired an actress who, from a distance, could pass for Angela. They photographed her leaving an apartment building in a neighborhood across town, shopping at a market, walking through a park. Each photo was carefully placed where Ji-hye's investigators would stumble across them. The bait worked faster than anyone expected. On the fourth day, Tae-hyun's phone rang while he and Angela were having dinner. He answered, listened, his expression growing darker, then hung up. They took the bait. Ji-hye's people spotted the decoy an hour ago. They've been following her, and Ji-hye just arrived in the area with 3 men. It's happening tonight. Angela's stomach clenched with fear and anticipation. What do we do? You stay here with 2 of my guards. I'm going to oversee everything from a nearby location. The police are already in position. Cameras are rolling. When Ji-hye makes her move, we'll have everything we need. I want to come, Angela said suddenly. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. She's my cousin. This is my nightmare. I deserve to see it end. Tae-hyun studied her face for a long moment, then sighed. You stay in the car with guards. Windows up, doors locked. You observe only. The moment anything goes wrong, you leave. Agreed. Agreed. An hour later, Angela found herself in the back of Tae-hyun's car, parked on a side street with a clear view of the apartment building where the decoy had led Ji-hye's people. 2 of Tae-hyun's security guards sat in the front seat, silent and alert. Tae-hyun was in a building across the street with his tech team, coordinating everything. Through the tinted window, Angela watched as a black van pulled up to the apartment building. Her cousin emerged first, looking haggard and desperate, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her designer clothes wrinkled. 3 men followed her out, large and intimidating. Angela's hands clenched into fists as she watched Ji-hye gesture urgently toward the building, clearly giving orders. The men nodded and moved toward the entrance, just as the decoy, wearing Angela's jacket and with her hair styled like Angela's curls, emerged from the building. Even from this distance, Angela could see the moment Ji-hye recognized her, or thought she did. Her cousin's face lit up with relief and something darker, something predatory. She gestured sharply, and her men moved fast, surrounding the decoy, grabbing her arms. That's when everything happened at once. Police cars roared in from both ends of the street, lights flashing, sirens wailing. Officers poured out, shouting commands in Korean. Tae-hyun's security team emerged from strategic positions, cameras capturing everything. The decoy dropped the act, showing her police identification, and Ji-hye's face went from triumph to horror in seconds. Angela watched as her cousin tried to run, stumbling in her heels. She made it maybe 10 feet before 2 officers caught her, forcing her to the ground, handcuffs glinting in the streetlights. The men who'd been with her were taken down just as quickly, their faces pressed against the pavement, weapons confiscated. It was over in less than 5 minutes. Clean and efficient and absolutely devastating. Tae-hyun appeared at Angela's car door, opening it carefully. It's done, he said quietly. She's in custody. Baek's men gave him up in exchange for lighter sentences. He's being arrested as we speak. It's over, Angela. You're safe. Angela climbed out of the car on shaking legs. Across the street, Ji-hye was being loaded into a police car, still screaming, still struggling. Their eyes met for one brief moment across the distance. Angela felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just exhaustion and relief, and the overwhelming need to never see that woman again. She turned into Tae-hyun's arms, and he held her tight while police lights painted the night in red and blue. It's really over, she whispered against his chest. It's really over, he confirmed. My legal team has all the evidence. Testimony from Baek's other victims who survived, financial records of the payments, everything. They'll both go to prison for a very long time. And the other women, the ones who disappeared? Tae-hyun's arms tightened around her. We're still investigating, but now that Baek's been arrested, we have access to his properties, his records. If there's anything to find, we'll find it. Angela nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. It should have felt like victory, but mostly it just felt like survival. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings and police interviews. Angela gave her statement multiple times, recounting the night of the drugging, the terror of waking up in a strange place, the relief of finding Tae-hyun instead of Mr. Baek. Her testimony was damning, and combined with the evidence Tae-hyun's team had gathered, it buried Ji-hye and Baek both. The media had a field day with the story. Underground kingpin saves woman from trafficking plot. Korean-American woman rescued from cousin's betrayal. The headlines were everywhere, and Angela hated every moment of the attention. But Tae-hyun shielded her from most of it, his connections managing the narrative, his lawyers ensuring her privacy was protected as much as possible. He'd moved her from the penthouse to a more secure private residence outside Seoul, a beautiful house with a garden where she could breathe without feeling watched. And somewhere in the midst of chaos and court dates and healing, they fell in love. It happened in quiet moments. Tae-hyun bringing her coffee in the morning just the way she liked it. Angela laughing at his terrible attempts to cook dinner. Walking through the garden together at dusk, their hands intertwined. Staying up late talking about their dreams, their fears, their hopes for a future that had seemed impossible just weeks before. 2 months after Ji-hye's arrest, on a cool autumn evening when the leaves were turning gold and the air smelled of rain, Tae-hyun took Angela to a private rooftop garden overlooking the city. Lanterns glowed softly in the darkness, and Seoul spread out below them like a field of stars. "I need to tell you something," Tae-hyun said, taking both her hands in his. Angela's heart started to race. "What is it?" "When you stumbled into my life, I thought you were a problem to solve, a disruption to my carefully controlled world. I was wrong." He squeezed her hands gently. "You weren't a disruption. You were an awakening. You reminded me that life isn't meant to be controlled and managed and kept safe. It's meant to be lived, with all its risks and complications and beautiful chaos." "Tae-hyun," she began, but he gently pressed a finger to her lips. "Let me finish. I've spent the last decade building an empire, accumulating power, proving to everyone that I was fine on my own. But I wasn't fine. I was empty, going through motions without meaning. And then you showed up, scared and brave, and so incredibly strong. And suddenly, everything had meaning again." He released her hands and dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. Angela gasped, tears immediately springing to her eyes. "Angela Kwadwo," Tae-hyun said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. "I know this is fast. I know people will say, we barely know each other, that we're rushing, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You are my best friend, my partner, my home. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that the best things are the ones we never planned for?" Through her tears, Angela laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a beautiful blend of diamond and traditional Korean design that somehow perfectly represented both of them. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply while the city lights sparkled around them. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying at once, Angela pressed her forehead to his. "For months ago, I came to Korea looking for family," she said softly. "I found betrayal instead. But then I found you, and you became more family than blood ever was." "We choose our family," Tae-hyun replied. "And I choose you. Every day for the rest of my life, I choose you." 6 months later, they married in a ceremony that blended both their cultures. Angela wore a dress that incorporated traditional Korean elements with African fabric from her father's homeland. Tae-hyun wore a suit but exchanged traditional accessories that honored both their heritages. The guest list was small, just people they truly cared about, and the celebration was filled with laughter and joy and hope for the future. As they danced together at their reception, Angela looked up at her husband and marveled at the strange path that had brought them together. She'd come to Korea seeking connection to her mother's heritage and instead found herself drugged, betrayed, and nearly trafficked. But from that nightmare had emerged something beautiful. A love she'd never expected with a man she'd never planned to meet. "What are you thinking?" Tae-hyun asked, pulling her closer. "That I'm grateful," Angela said honestly. Not for what Ji-hye did, but for where it led. For finding you. I'm grateful too, he replied. For your courage, for your trust, for giving me the chance to be more than just a man protecting his interests. You made me want to be a man worthy of you. You already were, Angela assured him. You just needed someone to show you. They kissed then, long and sweet, while their friends cheered and the night embraced them with stars. Somewhere across the city in a women's prison, Ji-hye sat in a cell paying for her crimes. Mr. Baek was in a similar cell, his empire destroyed, his reputation in ruins. The investigation into the missing women continued, bringing some closure to their families, ensuring justice was finally served. But Angela didn't think about them anymore. She'd chosen to focus on the future rather than dwelling on the past. She'd returned to teaching, this time at an international school in Seoul, where she could use both her languages and cultures. Tae-hyun had shifted his operations toward legitimate businesses, focusing on organizations that helped trafficking victims and vulnerable women. Together, they built a life neither had imagined, but both cherished. A life based not on control or fear, but on choice and love and the courage to embrace unexpected blessings. Because sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes betrayal opens the door to belonging. Sometimes waking up in a stranger's bed is just the beginning of coming home. And Angela Kwadwo, who'd flown across the world seeking family and found a nightmare instead, had ultimately discovered something better. She'd found a partner, a protector, a love that was worth every terrifying moment that had led her to him. In the end, she'd found exactly what she'd been looking for all along, just not in the way she'd expected. And that, she decided as Tae-hyun spun her across the dance floor with stars in his eyes and love in his smile, was the most beautiful surprise of all. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. Also, subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so you'll get notified about every new story. Tell me where you're watching from, because I love to know more about my viewers. How would you rate this story from 0 to 10? Hit that share button so others don't miss out on future stories. See you in the next one. Thank you.